Stepping onto the surface of Mercury would subject you to an extreme and inhospitable environment that would lead to death in a variety of ways, each influenced by the harsh conditions of the planet. First, consider the temperature extremes. Mercury is the closest planet to the Sun, and its surface experiences scorching heat during the day, with temperatures soaring up to about 800 degrees Fahrenheit. If you were to step onto the surface during the day, your body would be exposed to these extreme temperatures. The intense heat would cause rapid dehydration, as your body would struggle to regulate its temperature. Sweat would evaporate almost instantly, and you would quickly lose the ability to cool down. Severe burns would develop on your skin, and without protection, your organs would begin to fail under the strain of the heat. Once your body succumbed to the heat, you would likely experience heat stroke, marked by confusion, rapid heartbeat, and potentially loss of consciousness before your body ultimately shut down. The extreme conditions would expedite your demise, as your body would not be able to cope with such a hostile environment. Now, if you were to step onto Mercury during the night, the scenario would be drastically different but equally fatal. Mercury has an incredibly thin atmosphere, composed mostly of oxygen, sodium, hydrogen, helium, and potassium, which cannot retain heat. Nighttime temperatures can plummet to around -330 degrees Fahrenheit. In these frigid conditions, your body would be exposed to extreme cold that would lead to hypothermia almost immediately. Your skin would freeze and frostbite would set in, damaging tissues and potentially resulting in the loss of extremities. As your core temperature dropped, bodily functions would slow down. Your heart rate would decrease, and you would become lethargic, struggling to move. Eventually, your body would lose the ability to generate heat, leading to unconsciousness and death as your organs began to shut down from the cold. In addition to temperature extremes, you would also face the dangers of Mercury's surface. The planet is littered with craters, rocky terrain, and metallic elements. If you were to fall or become trapped, the lack of an atmosphere means that there is no air pressure to cushion your fall, which could result in severe trauma. The absence of any protective atmosphere also exposes you to harmful solar radiation. Without protection from radiation, your cells would suffer damage from high-energy particles, increasing the risk of cancer and cellular death. Moreover, the lack of a breathable atmosphere means that you would quickly run out of oxygen. Within minutes, you would start to experience suffocation, your body deprived of the vital gas necessary for survival. As the oxygen levels dropped, you would feel lightheaded, and confusion would set in. Eventually, your body would be unable to sustain itself, leading to loss of consciousness and death. In summary, stepping onto the surface of Mercury would lead to a swift and brutal demise, whether from the extreme heat or cold, the inhospitable terrain, or the lack of breathable air. Each scenario presents a unique set of lethal challenges that emphasize the planet's harshness, making it an uninhabitable world for humans without advanced protective technology. Stepping onto the surface of Venus would be an experience fraught with peril, as the planet is often described as one of the most hostile environments in the solar system. If you were to find yourself on Venus, your demise would unfold through a series of brutal and unforgiving challenges presented by its extreme conditions. First and foremost, the atmospheric pressure on Venus is about 92 times that of Earth's at sea level. This immense pressure is equivalent to being nearly a mile underwater on Earth. As you step onto the surface, your body would be immediately subjected to crushing forces. Without any protective gear, your lungs would struggle to endure the pressure. The air would feel heavy, and you would experience excruciating pain as your chest compressed under the weight of the atmosphere. Your organs would be unable to handle such stress, leading to internal injuries, ruptured lungs, and ultimately, a swift and painful death. The temperature on Venus is another overwhelming aspect. The average surface temperature hovers around 900 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead. If you were to step onto the surface, your body would be exposed to extreme heat almost instantly. The intense heat would lead to immediate burns, causing your skin to blister and peel away. The heat would penetrate deeply, damaging tissues and organs. Within moments, you would be suffering from third-degree burns, and your body would struggle to cope with such trauma. As your body began to fail under the relentless conditions, dehydration would set in rapidly. The heat would cause your bodily fluids to evaporate almost instantaneously, leading to the onset of heat stroke. You would feel disoriented and dizzy, your heart racing in a desperate attempt to circulate diminishing blood flow. Your ability to think clearly would diminish as your brain struggled to cope with the heat, and you would likely lose consciousness as your body succumbed to the overwhelming stress. In addition to the crushing pressure and searing heat, the atmosphere of Venus is composed mainly of carbon dioxide, with clouds of sulfuric acid. If you were to inhale the air, you would be met with toxic fumes that would quickly overwhelm your respiratory system. The acid content would cause severe chemical burns to your lungs and airways, leading to suffocation. Your throat and lungs would become inflamed, making it increasingly difficult to breathe. The combination of heat, pressure, and toxic air would create a perfect storm of lethal conditions. Moreover, the constant presence of sulfuric acid in the atmosphere means that even your skin would be under attack. The acid would begin to corrode your skin almost immediately upon contact, leading to painful burns and eventual systemic toxicity as it entered your bloodstream. Your body would be unable to recover from such a rapid and severe assault. If, by some miracle, you managed to survive the initial onslaught of heat, pressure, and toxicity, the environment itself would still pose significant threats. The rocky surface is covered with volcanic plains and features, including numerous volcanoes that may be active. If you were to wander into an area of volcanic activity, the risk of eruptions and molten lava would add another layer of danger to your already bleak situation. In summary, stepping onto the surface of Venus would lead to a swift and agonizing demise due to the extreme atmospheric pressure, searing temperatures, toxic air, and corrosive environment. Each of these factors would contribute to a rapid breakdown of bodily functions, resulting in a quick and brutal end, illustrating just how inhospitable Venus truly is to human life. Stepping onto the surface of Mars would expose you to a myriad of life-threatening conditions, each contributing to a slow and agonizing demise. Mars, often referred to as the Red Planet, possesses an environment that is harsh and unforgiving, making human survival nearly impossible without advanced life support systems. From the moment you set foot on the Martian surface, the first challenge you would face is the atmosphere, which is incredibly thin, about 0.6% the density of Earth's atmosphere. This means there is not enough oxygen to breathe. As you inhale the thin air, you would quickly realize that there is little to no oxygen available. Your body would begin to suffer from hypoxia, a condition characterized by insufficient oxygen to sustain bodily functions. You would feel lightheaded, dizzy, and disoriented within moments. As your brain and organs began to be deprived of oxygen, you would experience confusion and a sense of impending doom, ultimately leading to loss of consciousness in just a few minutes. In addition to the lack of breathable air, the Martian atmosphere is composed primarily of carbon dioxide, with trace amounts of other gases. If you attempted to breathe it in, your body would react adversely, leading to a buildup of carbon dioxide in your bloodstream. This would result in hypercapnia, causing headaches, shortness of breath, and confusion. As your body struggled to compensate for the lack of oxygen, your organs would begin to shut down, leading to a painful and distressing death. Another significant threat would be the extreme temperatures on Mars. Average temperatures can drop to around -80 degrees Fahrenheit, and in some regions, nighttime temperatures can plummet even lower. Without proper insulation and protection, your body would be unable to cope with the biting cold. Hypothermia would set in rapidly. You would begin to shiver uncontrollably as your body attempted to generate heat. As your core temperature dropped, you would experience fatigue, confusion, and eventually loss of consciousness. The cold would numb your extremities, and without warmth, your body would succumb to the frigid environment, leading to organ failure and death. Moreover, Mars is subject to dust storms that can envelop the planet for days or even weeks. These storms can create a choking haze of fine dust particles that would irritate your lungs and airways, exacerbating the already dire situation. The dust would make it nearly impossible to see, disorienting you further. Inhaling the dust would lead to respiratory issues, causing inflammation and damage to your lungs. In combination with the lack of oxygen, your ability to breathe would be severely compromised, pushing your body closer to collapse. Additionally, the surface of Mars is dotted with rugged terrain, including deep craters, rocky outcrops, and steep cliffs. If you were to stumble or fall, the lack of an atmosphere means that there would be no air pressure to cushion your impact. A fall could lead to broken bones, lacerations, or even more severe injuries. In a hostile environment without any medical assistance, these injuries would become life-threatening. Radiation exposure is yet another lethal factor. Mars has a very thin atmosphere and lacks a global magnetic field, which means you would be exposed to higher levels of cosmic radiation than on Earth. Prolonged exposure to this radiation can lead to acute radiation sickness, causing severe nausea, vomiting, and damage to your internal organs. Over time, this radiation exposure could also increase the risk of cancer, adding yet another layer of danger to your survival. In summary, stepping onto the surface of Mars would lead to a slow and painful death through a combination of hypoxia, extreme cold, respiratory distress from dust inhalation, potential physical injuries from the terrain, and lethal radiation exposure. Each of these factors would contribute to a rapid decline in your health, illustrating just how inhospitable and dangerous the Martian environment is for human life without proper protective measures. Stepping onto the surface of Jupiter is a concept that defies reality, as Jupiter is a gas giant and does not have a solid surface like Earth or Mars. However, imagining the experience of descending into its atmosphere provides a vivid illustration of the extreme conditions that would lead to a swift and brutal demise. As you begin your descent into Jupiter's atmosphere, the first thing you would encounter is a thick blanket of gaseous clouds, primarily composed of hydrogen and helium, with traces of ammonia, methane, and water vapor. The atmosphere is incredibly dense, and as you descend, the pressure would increase dramatically. By the time you reached the lower layers of the atmosphere, the pressure would be over 100 times that of Earth's at sea level. At this immense pressure, your body would face catastrophic effects. Without any sort of protective suit or vessel, the pressure would crush your lungs and internal organs almost instantaneously. You would feel your chest tightening, unable to take in air as your lungs collapsed under the weight of the atmosphere. The sensation would be excruciating, akin to being trapped in a vice, and within moments, you would lose consciousness as your body succumbed to the overwhelming force. While this crushing pressure would be fatal, the temperature in the deeper layers of Jupiter's atmosphere would also play a significant role in your demise. As you descend, temperatures can soar to thousands of degrees Fahrenheit, especially in the deeper regions of the atmosphere where the gas becomes increasingly compressed. This intense heat would cause your body to overheat rapidly. The extreme temperatures would lead to severe burns, cooking your flesh from the inside out. Your organs would begin to fail as they became unable to cope with the intense thermal energy, causing excruciating pain and leading to death. Furthermore, the turbulent atmosphere of Jupiter is characterized by massive storms and high-velocity winds that can exceed 300 miles per hour. If you were somehow still conscious, the violent winds would toss you about like a rag doll, making it impossible to maintain any sense of stability or orientation. The sheer force of the winds could lead to catastrophic injuries, breaking bones and causing internal trauma as you are hurled through the thick atmosphere. In addition to these immediate dangers, Jupiter's atmosphere is filled with harmful chemicals. The presence of ammonia and other toxic gases would create a suffocating environment. Even if you could somehow manage to breathe, the inhalation of these gases would lead to chemical burns in your lungs and airways, further complicating your already dire situation. You would experience difficulty breathing, coughing, and choking as your body struggled to process the toxic atmosphere. As you journey deeper, you would also encounter lightning storms that are among the most powerful in the solar system, with bolts that can be several times stronger than those on Earth. If you were somehow exposed to these electrical discharges, the consequences would be catastrophic. A lightning strike could result in severe burns, damage to vital organs, and immediate cardiac arrest. Ultimately, the combination of crushing pressure, extreme temperatures, toxic gases, violent winds, and the risk of being struck by lightning would lead to a swift and agonizing end. Your body would be overwhelmed by the harsh and unyielding conditions of Jupiter's atmosphere long before you could ever reach a solid surface, which, in reality, does not exist. This scenario highlights the utter inhospitability of Jupiter, making it clear that human life could not survive in such an extreme environment. Stepping onto the surface of Saturn presents a similarly impossible scenario as with Jupiter, as Saturn is also a gas giant lacking a solid surface. However, if we envision the experience of descending into its thick atmosphere, the conditions would be extraordinarily hostile and lethal. As you begin your descent into Saturn's atmosphere, the first sensation would be the overwhelming density of the gaseous layers surrounding you. Saturn's atmosphere is primarily composed of hydrogen and helium, with traces of methane, ammonia, and other gases. The atmosphere is incredibly thick, and as you move deeper, the pressure would increase dramatically. By the time you reach lower altitudes within the atmosphere, the pressure would be over 100 times that of Earth's at sea level. With this immense atmospheric pressure, your body would experience immediate and catastrophic effects. Without any protective suit, your lungs would begin to collapse under the weight of the inflating gases. You would feel a terrifying sensation as your chest constricts, making it impossible to breathe. The crushing pressure would result in the rupture of your lungs and the failure of your internal organs, causing you to lose consciousness within moments and leading to a swift and painful death. As you continue to descend, you would encounter extreme temperatures. The upper atmosphere of Saturn is frigid, with temperatures reaching around -280 degrees Fahrenheit. However, as you go deeper, the temperature rises dramatically. In the lower layers, temperatures can soar to over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This intense heat would begin to cook your body from the inside out, causing severe burns and leading to the failure of your vital organs. The sensation of your flesh being scorched would be excruciating and almost unimaginable. Moreover, the atmosphere of Saturn is characterized by violent storms and high-speed winds, which can reach up to 1,100 miles per hour in some regions. If you were somehow conscious during your descent, the ferocious winds would toss you around like a feather, subjecting you to extreme physical trauma. The force of the winds could easily break bones and cause internal injuries, leading to a rapid decline in your health. In addition to these immediate threats, the gaseous environment is composed of harmful chemicals. The presence of ammonia and other toxic compounds would create a suffocating atmosphere. If you attempted to inhale, you would quickly realize that there is no breathable air. Your lungs would be overwhelmed by the toxic gases, causing chemical burns and leading to respiratory failure. You would experience intense coughing, choking, and a sense of drowning in the thick atmosphere, all while struggling to survive in an environment that is utterly unwelcoming. As you descend even further, you would encounter electrical storms that can produce powerful lightning strikes. Saturn's lightning is among the most intense in the solar system, with bolts capable of producing energy equivalent to millions of lightning strikes on Earth. Being struck by such a bolt would result in catastrophic injuries, including severe burns and potential cardiac arrest, leading to almost instant death. Ultimately, the combination of crushing pressure, extreme temperatures, violent winds, toxic gases, and the threat of lightning would lead to a swift and agonizing end. Your body would be overwhelmed by the harsh conditions of Saturn's atmosphere long before you could ever reach a solid surface. This scenario starkly illustrates the inhospitability of Saturn, making it clear that human life cannot survive in such a brutal and extreme environment. Imagining stepping onto the surface of Uranus presents another scenario that is fundamentally impossible, as Uranus is an ice giant composed primarily of gases and ices, lacking a solid surface in the traditional sense. Nevertheless, envisioning a descent into its atmosphere reveals a series of extreme and life-threatening conditions that would lead to a swift and agonizing end. As you begin your descent into Uranus's atmosphere, you would first encounter a thick layer of clouds composed mainly of hydrogen, helium, and methane. The presence of methane gives Uranus its distinctive blue color, but as you venture deeper, these gases become increasingly dense. The atmospheric pressure would increase dramatically, far surpassing what you experience on Earth. By the time you reach lower altitudes, the pressure would be over 100 times that of Earth's atmosphere. This immense pressure creates the first fatal challenge. Without any protective gear, your lungs and internal organs would be subjected to a crushing force. As the pressure engulfs you, you would feel an immediate tightness in your chest, making it nearly impossible to inhale. Your lungs would collapse, leading to a rapid loss of consciousness as your body struggles to cope with the overwhelming force. In mere moments, you would succumb to asphyxiation, feeling your life slip away in a disorienting haze. As you continue descending, the temperature in Uranus's atmosphere would present another lethal threat. The upper atmosphere is cold, with temperatures around -350 degrees Fahrenheit. However, as you move deeper, the temperature can increase significantly, potentially reaching several hundred degrees Fahrenheit. This extreme temperature change would create a dire situation where your body would be subjected to severe thermal stress. If you could somehow survive the pressure, your flesh would begin to freeze in the upper layers, while deeper down, the heat would scorch your body. The sensation of extreme cold and heat simultaneously would be overwhelming, leading to tissue damage and organ failure. In addition to the crushing pressure and extreme temperatures, the atmospheric composition contains harmful chemicals. While hydrogen and helium are relatively harmless, the presence of ammonia and other trace gases poses a significant risk. If you attempted to breathe in this atmosphere, the toxic gases would cause immediate harm to your respiratory system. Your lungs would suffer from chemical burns, leading to coughing, choking, and extreme difficulty in breathing. The sensation of inhaling toxic gas would create a panic response as your body struggles for oxygen, ultimately resulting in respiratory failure and death. The atmosphere of Uranus is also known for its violent weather patterns, including fierce winds that can reach speeds of over 400 miles per hour. If you were somehow still conscious, the relentless winds would batter your body, throwing you around like a rag doll. The force of these winds could lead to severe physical trauma, breaking bones and causing internal injuries. The sensation of being violently tossed about would be terrifying, compounding your already desperate plight. Additionally, as you descend further into the depths of Uranus's atmosphere, you would encounter intense storms and lightning phenomena. While not as well known as those on Jupiter or Saturn, Uranus does experience electrical storms that could produce lightning capable of causing significant injury. If you were exposed to such a phenomenon, a lightning strike could result in severe burns, cardiac arrest, and immediate death. Ultimately, the combination of crushing pressure, extreme temperatures, toxic gases, and violent winds would lead to a swift and agonizing demise. Your body would be overwhelmed by the harsh conditions of Uranus's atmosphere long before you could reach any solid core, which remains a matter of speculation among scientists. This scenario serves to highlight the inhospitability of Uranus, illustrating that human life cannot endure in such an extreme and brutal environment. Imagining stepping onto the surface of Neptune leads to a similarly impossible situation, as Neptune is another gas giant, characterized by its dense atmosphere and lack of a solid surface. However, if we envision descending into Neptune's atmosphere, the extreme conditions would quickly prove fatal in a multitude of ways. As you begin your descent, the first thing you would encounter is a thick layer of clouds composed primarily of hydrogen, helium, and methane. The presence of methane gives Neptune its striking blue color, but as you venture deeper, the atmosphere becomes increasingly dense. The pressure increases dramatically, likely exceeding 100,000 times that of Earth's atmosphere at sea level by the time you reach deeper layers. The crushing pressure would be the first lethal challenge. Without any protective gear, your lungs and internal organs would be subjected to unimaginable forces. Almost immediately, you would feel a violent tightening in your chest as the pressure overwhelms your body. Breathing would become impossible as your lungs collapse under the weight of the atmosphere. Within moments, you would lose consciousness due to asphyxiation, and your body would begin to shut down as the pressure crushes your vital organs. As you descend further, you would encounter extreme temperatures. While the upper atmosphere can be extremely cold, with temperatures around -360 degrees Fahrenheit, The deeper layers can reach significantly higher temperatures, especially near the core where heat may exceed 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit. If you manage to survive the pressure initially, the intense heat in the lower layers would quickly become a dire threat. Your body would begin to experience thermal stress, leading to severe burns and cooking your flesh from the inside out. The sensation of your skin blistering and your insides overheating would be agonizing. In addition to these immediate dangers, the atmosphere contains harmful chemicals that would complicate your situation further. While hydrogen and helium are relatively benign, the presence of ammonia and other compounds would create a highly toxic environment. If you attempted to inhale this atmosphere, your lungs would be filled with these noxious gases, leading to chemical burns and respiratory failure. The sensation of choking on toxic gas would create a panicked feeling, further exacerbating your distress as your body struggled for oxygen. Neptune is also known for its violent weather patterns, with winds that can reach speeds of over 1,200 miles per hour, among the fastest in the solar system. If you were somehow still conscious, the relentless winds would toss you violently through the atmosphere, subjecting your body to extreme physical trauma. You could be battered by debris or simply thrown about like a rag doll, leading to broken bones and severe internal injuries. The force of the winds would be like being caught in a hurricane, making any attempt at survival utterly futile. Moreover, deep within Neptune's atmosphere, you would also encounter massive storms that can spawn lightning strikes with incredible intensity. If you were exposed to such storms, the likelihood of being struck by a bolt of lightning would be a real threat. The energy released in a single strike could cause devastating burns, immediate cardiac arrest, and a swift death. Ultimately, the combination of crushing pressure, extreme temperatures, toxic gases, violent winds, and the threat of lightning would culminate in a rapid and agonizing demise. Your body would be overwhelmed by the harsh conditions of Neptune's atmosphere long before you could reach any theoretical solid core, which remains largely unexplored and mysterious. This grim scenario underscores the inhospitability of Neptune, illustrating that human life cannot survive in such a brutal and extreme environment. Stepping onto the surface of Pluto presents a uniquely challenging scenario, as Pluto is classified as a dwarf planet and has a very different environment compared to the gas giants. While it does have a solid surface, the conditions are incredibly harsh and inhospitable for human life. As you imagine stepping onto Pluto, the first thing you would notice is the extreme cold. Surface temperatures on Pluto can plummet to around -375 degrees Fahrenheit. This bone-chilling cold would be your immediate challenge. Without any protective gear, your skin would quickly succumb to frostbite, as exposed flesh would freeze almost instantaneously. The sensation would start as a numbing chill, quickly followed by an intense pain as your skin and tissues crystallize. Within minutes, your fingers and toes could turn black and necrotic, leading to loss of limbs if you were somehow left in this environment long enough. Breathing would become another critical issue. The thin atmosphere of Pluto is composed mainly of nitrogen, with traces of methane and carbon monoxide. This atmosphere is extremely tenuous, with surface pressure less than 1/100,000th that of Earth's. If you attempted to inhale, you would find that there isn't enough oxygen to sustain life. Your lungs would struggle to extract any air, leading to suffocation. The sensation would be terrifying as your body instinctively gasps for breath, but you would be met with a cold, unyielding void. Within moments, you would lose consciousness due to hypoxia, as your brain and vital organs would be deprived of oxygen. In addition to the cold and lack of breathable air, the surface of Pluto is composed of icy nitrogen, methane, and other ices, creating an environment that is both alien and unwelcoming. The ground would be hard and slippery, with jagged ice formations that could pose a physical hazard. If you lost your footing and fell, the impact could cause serious injuries, such as fractures or concussions. The harsh terrain would make any efforts to move or escape excruciatingly difficult. Another lethal aspect of Pluto's environment is its exposure to radiation. While Pluto is far from the Sun, it is still subjected to cosmic rays and other forms of radiation. Without any protective shielding, you would be vulnerable to these harmful particles, which can lead to cellular damage and increase the risk of radiation sickness over time. Although this may not be an immediate cause of death, prolonged exposure would weaken your body and immune system, making it more difficult to withstand the other deadly conditions. Additionally, if you somehow survived the initial wave of freezing temperatures, lack of oxygen, and physical injuries, you would eventually face the long-term effects of isolation and despair. With no means of communication or support, the psychological toll would be immense. The overwhelming sense of hopelessness and fear would compound your physical suffering, leading to a mental breakdown as you realize the futility of your situation. Ultimately, the combination of extreme cold, lack of breathable air, harsh terrain, exposure to radiation, and the psychological effects of isolation would lead to a swift and agonizing death. Even though Pluto has a solid surface, it is a world that is incredibly hostile to human life. This scenario starkly illustrates the inhospitability of Pluto, making it clear that survival in such an environment is impossible without advanced technology and protective measures. Stepping onto the surface of Eris, a distant dwarf planet located in the cold reaches of the solar system, would present a series of extreme and life-threatening challenges. Eris is one of the largest known dwarf planets and orbits the Sun at an average distance of about 10 billion kilometers, where conditions are inhospitable to human life. As you imagine the experience of stepping onto Eris, the first and most immediate sensation would be the freezing cold. Surface temperatures on Eris can plummet to around -400 degrees Fahrenheit. Without any protective gear, your body would be overwhelmed by the intense cold almost instantly. The exposed skin would begin to freeze, leading to severe frostbite. Initially, you might feel a numbing sensation, but this would be quickly followed by excruciating pain as your tissues begin to crystallize. In just a few minutes, your fingers and toes would turn black, indicating significant tissue damage, and any exposed areas would quickly become necrotic. Breathing would pose a critical problem as well. Eris has a very thin atmosphere, primarily composed of nitrogen, with traces of methane and other gases. The pressure on the surface is less than 1/100,000th that of Earth's atmosphere, making it impossible to breathe normally. If you attempted to inhale, your lungs would struggle to find enough oxygen, leading to rapid suffocation. The sensation of gasping for breath in such a thin atmosphere would be terrifying, as your body instinctively searches for air but finds only a frigid vacuum. Within seconds, you would lose consciousness due to hypoxia, with your brain and vital organs deprived of oxygen. The surface of Eris is composed of a mixture of ice and rock, creating a rugged terrain filled with frozen methane and other ices. This environment would be treacherous to navigate. If you stumbled or fell, the hard, icy surface could result in serious injuries, such as fractures or concussions. The jagged ice formations would pose a further risk, potentially causing deep lacerations or puncture wounds. Any injury in such an environment would be compounded by the extreme cold, making it more difficult for your body to heal and increasing the risk of infection. Additionally, Eris is located far from the Sun, which means it is exposed to cosmic radiation and solar winds without any significant atmosphere to shield you. Over time, this exposure to radiation could lead to cellular damage and increase the risk of radiation sickness. While the effects of radiation would not be immediate, they would contribute to a slow deterioration of your health, leading to symptoms such as fatigue, nausea, and an increased vulnerability to diseases. The psychological burden of knowing you are alone, far from any help, would weigh heavily on your mind, exacerbating feelings of despair and hopelessness. Given the isolation and the complete lack of infrastructure or life support systems on Eris, the mental strain would begin to take its toll. You would face a profound sense of loneliness and fear, compounded by the knowledge that there would be no way to signal for help or communicate with the outside world. As your physical condition worsened, the psychological distress would escalate, leading to panic, confusion, and a breakdown of rational thought. Ultimately, the combination of extreme cold, a lack of breathable air, treacherous terrain, exposure to harmful radiation, and psychological isolation would culminate in a swift and agonizing demise. Even though Eris has a solid surface, it is a world that is utterly inhospitable to human life. This scenario starkly illustrates the harsh reality of existence on Eris, emphasizing that survival in such an environment is impossible without advanced technology and protective measures. Stepping onto the surface of Haumea, a unique and distant dwarf planet located in the Kuiper Belt, would be an encounter with an environment that is incredibly hostile to human life. Haumea is notable for its elongated shape, rapid rotation, and icy surface, but the conditions there make survival virtually impossible. As you imagine your first moments on Haumea, the first thing you would be struck by is the extreme cold. The average surface temperature hovers around -400 degrees Fahrenheit. This bone-chilling cold would rapidly begin to affect your body. Without any protective gear, exposed skin would start to freeze almost instantly. You would experience an initial numbing sensation, but this would quickly give way to excruciating pain as frostbite set in. Fingers and toes would begin to turn black as the tissues crystallize and die, leaving you with severe and potentially irreversible damage. Breathing would prove to be another critical challenge. Haumea has a very tenuous atmosphere primarily composed of hydrogen and helium, with trace amounts of other gases. The atmospheric pressure is far less than that of Earth, insufficient to support human respiration. If you attempted to inhale, your lungs would be unable to extract enough oxygen, leading to rapid asphyxiation. The panic of gasping for air would overwhelm you as your body instinctively seeks oxygen, but the thin atmosphere would leave you suffocating in a frigid void. In a matter of moments, you would lose consciousness due to a lack of oxygen, with your brain and vital organs deprived of the life-sustaining element. The surface of Haumea is primarily made up of crystalline ice and various ices, including water and possibly ammonia. This terrain, while visually intriguing with its bright surfaces, is treacherous. The icy ground could be slippery and uneven, posing a significant risk of falls. If you stumbled or lost your footing, the impact could lead to fractures or other serious injuries. The sharp ice formations might also cause deep cuts and lacerations, which would be particularly dangerous in such an inhospitable environment. The extreme cold would hinder any healing process, increasing the risk of infection and further complicating any injuries sustained. In addition to the immediate physical dangers, you would also face the effects of exposure to cosmic radiation. Haumea, being located far from the sun, lacks a substantial atmosphere or magnetic field to shield you from harmful cosmic rays and radiation. Prolonged exposure to this radiation would lead to cellular damage and increase the risk of developing radiation sickness. While the effects of radiation may not be immediate, the cumulative damage could weaken your immune system, making you more susceptible to illness and further distress. Psychologically, the isolation of being on Haumea would also take a significant toll. You would be completely alone, far from any help or support, with no way to communicate with the outside world. The overwhelming sense of loneliness and fear would compound your physical suffering, creating a mental state filled with despair. As your physical condition deteriorated, the psychological burden would intensify, leading to feelings of hopelessness and panic. Ultimately, the combination of extreme cold, lack of breathable air, treacherous terrain, exposure to harmful radiation, and profound psychological isolation would culminate in a swift and agonizing demise. Even though Haumea has a solid surface, it is a world that is utterly inhospitable to human life. This scenario starkly illustrates the harsh reality of existence on Haumea, emphasizing that survival in such an environment is impossible without advanced technology and protective measures. The experience would serve as a grim reminder of how fragile human life is in the face of the universe's extreme conditions. Stepping onto the surface of Makemake, a distant dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt, would be an encounter with a truly unforgiving and inhospitable environment. Makemake's conditions are so extreme that any attempt to survive on its surface would result in a swift and agonizing death. As you imagine your first moments on Makemake, the overwhelming sensation would be the biting, bone-chilling cold. The average surface temperature on Makemake hovers around -400 degrees Fahrenheit, a temperature so low that it is almost unimaginable. Without any protective gear, your exposed skin would begin to freeze almost instantly. The initial numbing sensation would quickly give way to excruciating pain as your flesh and tissues crystallize. Your fingers and toes would rapidly turn black, indicating severe frostbite and tissue necrosis. The cold would penetrate deep into your body, causing your core temperature to plummet, leading to hypothermia and the eventual failure of your vital organs. Breathing would be another immediate and critical challenge. Make's atmosphere is incredibly thin, composed primarily of nitrogen, methane, and trace amounts of other gases. The atmospheric pressure is less than 1/100,000th that of Earth, making it impossible for your lungs to extract enough oxygen to sustain life. If you attempted to take a breath, you would find that the air simply does not contain the necessary elements to support respiration. Your body would instinctively gasp for air, but the frigid vacuum would offer no relief. Within moments, you would lose consciousness due to hypoxia, as your brain and vital organs are deprived of the oxygen they desperately need. The surface of Make is a treacherous landscape, covered in a mixture of frozen nitrogen, methane, and other ices. This terrain would be extremely hazardous to navigate, with the potential for slips, falls, and serious injuries. If you were to stumble or lose your footing, the hard, icy ground could result in fractures, concussions, or other traumatic injuries. The jagged ice formations could also pose a risk of deep lacerations or puncture wounds. In such an unforgiving environment, any injury would be exacerbated by the extreme cold, making it nearly impossible for your body to heal or stave off infection. In addition to the immediate physical dangers, you would also face the long-term effects of exposure to harmful radiation. Make, being located far from the sun, is subjected to a barrage of cosmic rays and solar winds without the protection of a substantial atmosphere or magnetic field. This radiation would slowly but steadily damage your cells, increasing the risk of radiation sickness over time. While the effects may not be immediately fatal, the cumulative damage would weaken your immune system and overall health, making you more vulnerable to other life-threatening conditions. The psychological toll of being alone on Make would also be immense. Isolated from any form of communication or rescue, you would be consumed by a profound sense of hopelessness and despair. The overwhelming isolation, combined with the knowledge that you are facing an unsurvivable situation, would lead to a mental breakdown, further exacerbating your physical suffering. Ultimately, the combination of extreme cold, lack of breathable air, treacherous terrain, exposure to harmful radiation, and the psychological burden of isolation would result in a swift and agonizing demise. Make is a world that is utterly inhospitable to human life, and any attempt to survive on its surface would be futile. This scenario serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of human existence in the face of the extreme conditions that exist in the far reaches of our solar system. Stepping onto the surface of Ceres, the largest object in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, would present a series of challenges that would make survival exceedingly difficult. Although Ceres is somewhat more hospitable than some other celestial bodies, the conditions remain harsh and ultimately lethal for a human without advanced technology and protective measures. As you imagine your first moments on Ceres, you would be met by the frigid temperatures that characterize this dwarf planet. The average surface temperature hovers around -100 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to cause significant harm. Without proper thermal protection, your body would begin to react almost immediately to the extreme chill. The exposed skin would start to feel numb and tingly, sensations that would quickly escalate to sharp pain as blood vessels constrict in an effort to preserve heat. Within minutes, frostbite would set in, beginning with your fingers and toes, turning them a sickly shade of blue or black as the tissues freeze and die. Breathing would pose another immediate and critical issue. Ceres has a very thin atmosphere composed mainly of carbon dioxide, with trace amounts of nitrogen and other gases. This atmosphere is insufficient to provide the oxygen necessary for human survival. If you attempted to inhale, your lungs would struggle to extract oxygen from the sparse air. Instead, you would experience a desperate gasping sensation, your body instinctively searching for breathable air. Within moments, the lack of oxygen would lead to hypoxia, causing you to lose consciousness. The brain and vital organs would quickly become deprived of oxygen, leading to irreversible damage and death. The surface of Ceres is also dotted with a variety of geological features, including large craters, ice deposits, and possibly even briny water. While the landscape might seem intriguing, it is also fraught with dangers. The icy terrain could be deceptively slippery, making it easy to lose your footing and fall. A fall could lead to serious injuries, such as fractures or concussions. The possibility of sharp ice formations or jagged rock could result in deep lacerations, which would be especially dangerous in an environment where medical assistance is non-existent. The extreme cold would compound any injury, significantly slowing healing and increasing the risk of infection. Another factor to consider is the exposure to cosmic radiation. While Ceres has a thin atmosphere that offers some protection, it is still insufficient to shield you from the harmful effects of radiation from the sun and cosmic rays. Over time, exposure to this radiation would lead to cellular damage, increasing the risk of radiation sickness. While the effects may not be immediate, the cumulative impact could weaken your immune system, making you more susceptible to infections and diseases. Psychologically, being alone on Ceres would be an incredibly isolating experience. The vast emptiness and silence of the surface, combined with the knowledge that there is no immediate help or communication with the outside world, would create a profound sense of despair. As your physical condition deteriorates and your mind begins to spiral into anxiety and panic, the psychological toll would further exacerbate your suffering. In summary, the combination of extreme cold, lack of breathable air, treacherous terrain, exposure to harmful radiation, and the deep mental strain of isolation would culminate in a swift and agonizing demise on the surface of Ceres. Although it might be considered more hospitable than other celestial bodies, it remains an utterly inhospitable environment for human life. This scenario underscores the fragility of human existence in the face of the overwhelming challenges posed by the cosmos. Stepping onto the surface of a hypothetical planet orbiting Proxima Centauri, the closest known star to the Sun, would be an encounter with an incredibly hostile environment that poses immediate threats to human life. While Proxima Centauri b, the most well-known exoplanet in the system, is located in the star's habitable zone, the conditions on its surface would still be fraught with danger. As you imagine your first moments on this distant world, you would be struck by the intense gravitational pull of the planet, which could be significantly different from Earth's. Depending on the planet's size and density, this gravitational force might be stronger or weaker, potentially causing disorientation and difficulty in movement. If the gravity were greater than Earth's, your body would feel heavy, making it hard to walk or even stand upright, leading to a sense of fatigue and strain on your muscles. The first thing that would likely hit you is the atmospheric conditions. Proxima Centauri b is believed to potentially have an atmosphere, but the specifics are largely unknown. If the atmosphere was thin, you would quickly find it difficult to breathe. The air might contain harmful gases or insufficient oxygen levels, leading to immediate respiratory distress. Your lungs would struggle to extract the necessary oxygen, and you would begin to gasp for breath. Within moments, the lack of oxygen would lead to hypoxia, causing you to lose consciousness as your brain and vital organs are deprived of the essential element. Even if the atmosphere were breathable, the proximity to Proxima Centauri poses significant risks due to the star's activity. Proxima Centauri is a red dwarf star known for its frequent stellar flares, which can release bursts of radiation and high-energy particles. If you were exposed to such a flare without protective shielding, the intense radiation could lead to acute radiation sickness. Symptoms would include nausea, vomiting, and confusion, followed by severe damage to your cells and tissues. The radiation exposure would compromise your immune system, making you more vulnerable to infections and leading to long-term health issues. The surface temperature on Proxima Centauri b could vary significantly depending on its atmospheric conditions and distance from the star. If the planet experienced extreme temperatures, either scorching hot or freezing cold, your body would struggle to cope. In extreme heat, you would quickly succumb to heat stroke, with your body overheating, leading to confusion, seizures, and eventually death. Conversely, if the surface were frigid, you would face the same risks associated with extreme cold, such as hypothermia and frostbite. The landscape itself could be another source of danger. If the surface were rocky or covered in jagged formations, navigating this terrain would pose a risk of falls and injuries. A slip could lead to fractures or other serious injuries, and in an environment devoid of medical assistance, these injuries would be exacerbated by the harsh conditions, leading to complications that could prove fatal. Psychologically, the isolation of being on a distant planet orbiting Proxima Centauri would take a toll on your mental state. The vast emptiness, combined with the knowledge that there is no immediate hope for rescue or communication with Earth, would create an overwhelming sense of despair and anxiety. The stress of survival in such an unforgiving environment would compound your suffering, leading to a mental breakdown as you grapple with the reality of your situation. In summary, the combination of challenging gravitational forces, potential atmospheric hazards, exposure to harmful radiation, extreme temperatures, treacherous terrain, and profound psychological isolation would culminate in a swift and agonizing demise on the surface of a planet orbiting Proxima Centauri. Despite its potential to harbor life, the harsh conditions would underscore the fragility of human existence in the cosmos, reminding us of the immense challenges we would face in such alien environments. Stepping onto the surface of TRAPPIST-1e, one of the intriguing exoplanets located in the TRAPPIST-1 system, would present a series of life-threatening challenges in an environment that is both captivating and perilous. Although TRAPPIST-1e lies within the habitable zone of its host star, the conditions on its surface could be far from hospitable for human life. As you imagine your first moments on this distant world, the first thing you would notice is the gravity. Depending on the planet's mass and density, the gravitational force could be slightly different from Earth's, potentially causing disorientation as your body adjusts. If the gravity were stronger, you would feel an oppressive weight, making even simple movements exhausting. If it were weaker, your body would feel light, causing you to overshoot your steps and struggle to maintain balance. The atmosphere of TRAPPIST-1e is another critical concern. Scientists speculate that it may have a substantial atmosphere, but the composition remains uncertain. If the atmosphere were thin or lacking in oxygen, you would quickly find it nearly impossible to breathe. Your lungs would instinctively attempt to draw in air, but in the absence of sufficient oxygen, you would begin to feel lightheaded and disoriented. Within moments, hypoxia would set in, resulting in a loss of consciousness as your brain and vital organs are deprived of oxygen. Even if the atmosphere were breathable, the proximity to TRAPPIST-1, a cool red dwarf star, could lead to exposure to harmful levels of radiation. Red dwarfs are known for their stellar flares, which can emit bursts of high-energy particles and radiation. If you were caught in one of these flares without adequate shielding, you would experience acute radiation sickness. Initial symptoms could include nausea and confusion, followed by severe damage to your cells. Over time, this radiation would compromise your immune system, increasing your vulnerability to infections and long-term health issues. The surface temperature on TRAPPIST-1e could vary dramatically, influenced by its atmospheric conditions and its distance from the star. If the planet experienced extreme heat, you would quickly succumb to heat exhaustion or heat stroke, with your body unable to cool itself effectively. Symptoms would include confusion, dizziness, and eventually organ failure as your body overheats. Conversely, if the surface were cold, you would face a rapid onset of hypothermia. Your body would struggle to maintain its core temperature, leading to shivering, confusion, and, if unaddressed, eventual death. Additionally, the landscape of TRAPPIST-1e could be hazardous. If the surface were rocky, uneven, or covered in deep craters, navigating this terrain would pose risks of falls and injuries. A stumble could lead to fractures or lacerations, and without medical assistance, these injuries would worsen, potentially resulting in infection or severe complications. The harsh environment would make it nearly impossible for any injury to heal effectively, compounding your suffering. Psychologically, the isolation and desolation of being on a distant planet would weigh heavily on your mind. The vastness of the landscape, combined with the knowledge that there is no immediate hope for rescue or communication with Earth, would create overwhelming feelings of despair and loneliness. As your physical condition deteriorates and the reality of your situation sinks in, the mental strain could lead to panic and confusion, ultimately compounding your suffering. In summary, the combination of unfamiliar gravity, potential atmospheric hazards, exposure to harmful radiation, extreme temperatures, treacherous terrain, and profound psychological isolation would culminate in a swift and agonizing demise on the surface of TRAPPIST-1e. Despite its location in the habitable zone, the conditions would starkly remind any visitor of the fragility of human existence in the vast cosmos, highlighting the immense challenges posed by alien environments. Stepping onto the surface of TRAPPIST-1f, one of the intriguing planets in the TRAPPIST-1 system, would immerse you in an environment that, while located in the habitable zone of its star, presents a myriad of threats to human life. The conditions on this exoplanet could be far more hostile than they might initially appear, leading to a swift and agonizing demise. As you visualize your first steps on TRAPPIST-1f, the first sensation you might notice is the gravity. While it is estimated that TRAPPIST-1f is slightly larger than Earth, its gravitational pull could be different. If the gravity were stronger, you would feel an immediate heaviness, making even simple movements laborious and exhausting. If it were weaker, you might find yourself buoyed, struggling to control your movements as you floated slightly above the ground. This disorientation would complicate your ability to navigate the terrain. The atmosphere of TRAPPIST-1f is another critical factor. While it is theorized that the planet could harbor a significant atmosphere, the exact composition remains uncertain. If the atmosphere were thin or lacked sufficient oxygen, you would quickly find yourself gasping for air. Your lungs would strain to pull in the limited oxygen available, leading to an immediate sense of panic as your body realized it was not receiving the life-sustaining gas it needed. Hypoxia would set in within moments, causing dizziness and confusion before you lost consciousness, your brain deprived of oxygen and unable to function. Even if the atmosphere were breathable, you would still face the risk of radiation exposure. TRAPPIST-1 is a red dwarf star known for its variable luminosity and frequent stellar flares. These flares can release bursts of high-energy particles that would be detrimental to your health. If you were caught in such a flare without adequate protective measures, you would experience acute radiation sickness. Symptoms would manifest quickly, including nausea, vomiting, and confusion, as your cells succumb to the damaging effects of radiation. Over time, your immune system would weaken, increasing your vulnerability to infections and leading to long-term health complications. The surface environment itself could also pose significant dangers. Depending on its geological features, TRAPPIST-1f could have rocky terrain, deep craters, or even volcanic activity. Navigating such a landscape would be treacherous. A misstep on uneven ground could lead to severe injuries, such as fractures or deep cuts, which would become even more dangerous in an alien environment devoid of medical resources. The likelihood of infection from such injuries would rise, especially if the atmosphere contained harmful microbes or bacteria. Temperature fluctuations on TRAPPIST-1f could also be extreme. If the planet experienced conditions akin to its neighboring planets in the TRAPPIST-1 system, temperatures could swing dramatically between day and night. If you found yourself exposed to scorching heat during the day, your body would struggle to cool itself, leading to heat exhaustion or heat stroke. Symptoms would include disorientation, confusion, and ultimately organ failure as your systems became overwhelmed by the heat. Conversely, if nighttime temperatures plunged, you would face the risk of hypothermia. Your body would lose heat rapidly, leading to shivering, confusion, and eventual death as your core temperature dropped to dangerous levels. The psychological impact of being on TRAPPIST-1f would be profound. The vast, alien landscape, combined with the knowledge that you were utterly alone and far from Earth, would create a crushing sense of isolation and despair. As your physical condition deteriorated and the reality of your situation set in, feelings of panic and hopelessness would likely overwhelm you. The mental anguish of being trapped in such a hostile environment could lead to a total breakdown, further compounding your suffering. In summary, the combination of unfamiliar gravity, potential atmospheric hazards, exposure to harmful radiation, extreme temperatures, treacherous terrain, and profound psychological isolation would culminate in a swift and agonizing demise on the surface of TRAPPIST-1F, despite its position in the habitable zone. The challenges posed by this alien environment would starkly remind any visitor of the fragility of human life in the vastness of space, highlighting the immense dangers that await in the cosmos. Stepping onto the surface of TRAPPIST-1G, the outermost planet in the TRAPPIST-1 system, would thrust you into an alien environment where the potential for survival quickly diminishes due to a multitude of hostile factors. While TRAPPIST-1G is located in the habitable zone of its parent star, the conditions there could be vastly different from those of Earth, presenting immediate threats that would lead to a painful demise. As you first set foot on this distant world, you'd immediately feel the effects of gravity. TRAPPIST-1G is thought to be somewhat larger than Earth, and the gravitational force may be slightly stronger. This increased gravity would place an immediate strain on your body, making movement more laborious and causing fatigue to set in rapidly. Simple actions like walking or bending down would require substantial effort, leading to muscle exhaustion and a sense of physical vulnerability. The atmosphere would be your next concern. While TRAPPIST-1G could possess a substantial atmosphere, its composition remains unknown. If the atmosphere were thin or devoid of sufficient oxygen, your lungs would quickly struggle to draw in the air necessary for survival. You would begin to feel lightheaded and disoriented as hypoxia took hold, depriving your brain of oxygen. Within moments, you would succumb to unconsciousness, your body unable to sustain itself in the life-threatening environment. Even if the atmosphere were breathable, the radiation from TRAPPIST-1, a red dwarf star with a reputation for frequent stellar flares, would pose a significant risk. These flares can unleash bursts of radiation and high-energy particles that would be harmful to human biology. If you were exposed to such a flare, you would experience acute radiation sickness. The initial symptoms would present themselves as nausea and disorientation, quickly escalating to more severe consequences as your cells suffered irreparable damage. Over time, the radiation would compromise your immune system, making you more susceptible to infections and leading to severe long-term health issues. The surface conditions on TRAPPIST-1G could further exacerbate your plight. Depending on the geological features, you might encounter a rugged landscape filled with rocky outcrops, deep ravines, or even volcanic activity. Navigating this treacherous terrain would be perilous. A misstep could result in serious injuries, such as fractures or lacerations, which would become increasingly dangerous without medical assistance. In an alien environment, the risk of infection from such injuries would be heightened, particularly if there were any harmful microbes present in the soil or atmosphere. Temperature extremes would also be a significant factor. If TRAPPIST-1G exhibited a climate similar to its neighboring planets, you would likely experience sharp fluctuations between extreme heat during the day and frigid cold at night. If you found yourself exposed to the scorching heat, your body would rapidly lose its ability to cool itself, leading to heat exhaustion or heat stroke. Symptoms would manifest as confusion, dizziness, and eventual organ failure. Conversely, should nightfall bring plummeting temperatures, you would be at risk of hypothermia. Your body would struggle to maintain its core temperature, leading to shivering, cognitive dysfunction, and ultimately death as your body succumbed to the cold. The psychological impact of being isolated on a distant planet would be profound. The vast, barren landscape, devoid of familiar landmarks and the comforting presence of other humans, would create a crushing sense of loneliness and despair. As your physical condition worsened and the reality of your predicament sank in, feelings of panic and hopelessness would likely overwhelm you. The mental anguish of being trapped in such a hostile environment would compound your suffering, potentially leading to a total psychological breakdown. In summary, the combination of unfamiliar gravity, potential atmospheric hazards, exposure to harmful radiation, extreme temperatures, treacherous terrain, and profound psychological isolation would culminate in a swift and agonizing demise on the surface of TRAPPIST-1G. Despite its location in the habitable zone, the myriad challenges posed by this alien environment would starkly highlight the fragility of human life in the vastness of space, serving as a sobering reminder of the immense dangers that await in the cosmos. Stepping onto the surface of Kepler-186f, an exoplanet located about 500 light-years away in the constellation Cygnus, would thrust you into a world that, while situated in its star's habitable zone, could harbor an environment hostile to human life. The potential for survival would quickly diminish due to a series of unforgiving challenges, leading to a swift and agonizing demise. As your feet touch the ground of Kepler-186f, the first thing you might notice is the gravity. Kepler-186f is roughly similar in size to Earth, but its gravity could vary based on its density and mass. If the gravitational pull is stronger, every movement would feel labored and exhausting, your body struggling to adapt to the increased weight. Simple actions like walking would become a challenge, leading to early fatigue and a sense of vulnerability. Conversely, if gravity were weaker, your movements might feel buoyant and awkward, resulting in difficulty controlling your balance and direction. The atmosphere of Kepler-186f would be a critical concern. While it is theorized that the planet could have a substantial atmosphere, its composition remains uncertain. If the atmosphere were thin or lacking sufficient oxygen, you would quickly find yourself gasping for breath. Your lungs would instinctively try to extract oxygen from the limited air, but hypoxia would set in rapidly, causing dizziness and confusion. Within moments, you would lose consciousness, your brain deprived of the essential oxygen it needs to function. Even if the atmosphere were breathable, the potential for exposure to harmful radiation still loomed large. Kepler-186f orbits a K-type star, which is less volatile than a red dwarf but still emits radiation that could be damaging. If you found yourself exposed to elevated radiation levels, the effects would be insidious. Initial symptoms might include nausea and fatigue, but over time your cells would suffer from the damaging effects of radiation exposure. This could lead to acute radiation sickness, severely compromising your immune system and increasing your vulnerability to infections. The surface conditions would also pose significant risks. Depending on the geological features of Kepler-186f, you might encounter uneven terrain, deep canyons, or volcanic activity. Navigating such an environment would be treacherous. A misstep could lead to serious injuries, such as sprains, fractures, or cuts, which would be exacerbated by the lack of medical resources. In an alien world, the risk of infection from these injuries would be heightened, especially if the environment contained unknown pathogens or bacteria. Temperature variations would add another layer of danger. If Kepler-186f experienced significant fluctuations between day and night, you could find yourself in extreme conditions. During the day, if temperature soared, your body would struggle to cope with the heat. You might experience heat exhaustion or heat stroke, with symptoms manifesting as confusion, dizziness, and ultimately organ failure. Conversely, nighttime conditions could plummet to frigid lows. In such cold, your body would rapidly lose heat, leading to hypothermia. You would shiver uncontrollably at first, but as your core temperature dropped, confusion would set in, followed by a deathly stillness as your body succumbed to the cold. Psychologically, the isolation of being on an alien planet would weigh heavily on your mind. The vast, unrecognizable landscape, coupled with the knowledge that you are completely alone and far from any form of help, would create an overwhelming sense of despair. As your physical condition deteriorated, the stark reality of your situation would lead to feelings of panic and hopelessness. The mental anguish of being trapped in such a hostile environment could push you toward a psychological breakdown, compounding your suffering and diminishing your will to survive. In summary, the combination of unfamiliar gravity, potential atmospheric hazards, exposure to harmful radiation, extreme temperatures, treacherous terrain, and profound psychological isolation would culminate in a swift and agonizing demise on the surface of Kepler-186f. Despite its position in the habitable zone, the myriad challenges posed by this alien environment would serve as a stark reminder of the fragility of human life in the vastness of space, emphasizing the immense dangers that await in the cosmos. Stepping onto the surface of HD 209458b, a gas giant located approximately 159 light-years away in the constellation Pegasus, would be a surreal and perilous experience. Known as Osiris, this exoplanet is classified as a hot Jupiter, meaning it orbits extremely close to its parent star, resulting in intense conditions that would be lethal to human beings. As you descend onto the planet, you would encounter a thick atmosphere composed predominantly of hydrogen and helium, with traces of other gases. The first indication that you are in a hostile environment would be the staggering atmospheric pressure. HD 209458b has a surface pressure thousands of times greater than that of Earth. This immense pressure would crush your body almost instantaneously, compressing your lungs and internal organs. You wouldn't have the chance to react, your ribcage would collapse under the force, leading to immediate death as your organs were unable to function under such extreme conditions. If, hypothetically, you were able to survive the pressure and breathe the atmosphere, the extreme temperatures would present a second immediate threat. The planet's proximity to its star means that daytime temperatures soar to staggering levels, often exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. This kind of heat would incinerate any organic matter within seconds. Even if you were equipped with advanced protective gear, the sheer intensity of the heat would overwhelm any human-made material, ultimately leading to a swift and agonizing end as you were engulfed by flames. Should you somehow manage to withstand the crushing pressure and searing temperatures, the possibility of violent weather phenomena would loom large. HD 209458b experiences intense winds and storms that can reach speeds of over 8,700 kilometers per hour. These winds would create a chaotic environment, with swirling gases and violent gusts that could toss you around like a leaf. You would be battered by high-velocity winds, leading to severe trauma or being swept away into the depths of the atmosphere, where you would succumb to the elements. Furthermore, the atmospheric composition itself would pose a significant risk. Even in a scenario where you could breathe, the presence of toxic gases and compounds would be fatal. The potential for acid clouds, formed from the interaction of various atmospheric chemicals, could lead to corrosive rains that would burn through your skin and internal tissues. The intense heat combined with these corrosive elements would result in a torturous experience, as your body became overwhelmed by both external and internal damage. The psychological aspect of being on HD 209458b would also be profound. The realization that you are standing on a planet where survival is impossible would likely induce panic and despair. The overwhelming sensory experiences of extreme heat, pressure, and chaotic winds would lead to a state of confusion and fear. Your mind would race as you tried to comprehend the danger surrounding you, but the harsh reality would set in quickly, leaving you with little time to process the situation before succumbing to the lethal environment. In summary, stepping onto the surface of HD 209458b would lead to a swift and horrifying demise. The combination of crushing atmospheric pressure, extreme temperatures, violent weather, and toxic gaseous composition would create an environment utterly inhospitable to human life. Any attempt to survive would be futile, as the myriad dangers present on this exoplanet would serve as a stark reminder of the limits of human endurance in the vast and unforgiving cosmos. Stepping onto the surface of Osiris, a distant object in the Kuiper belt, would thrust you into an environment that is starkly inhospitable and fraught with danger. Osiris, a trans-Neptunian object known for its icy composition and potential for extreme conditions, offers a chilling reminder of the vastness and unpredictability of the cosmos. As you approach Osiris, the first indication of its remoteness would be the weak sunlight that barely illuminates its surface. The light, distant and cold, casts elongated shadows over the icy terrain, creating an eerie, otherworldly atmosphere. Upon landing, the moment your feet touch the frozen ground, the immediate sensation would be an overwhelming chill that penetrates your clothing, seeping into your bones. The surface is likely composed of a thick layer of frozen nitrogen and methane, creating a landscape that is both beautiful and deadly. Once on the surface, you would quickly become aware of the extreme cold enveloping you. Temperatures on Osiris can drop to around -220 degrees Celsius, and within moments, your body would begin to react to the frigid environment. The skin on your extremities would grow numb, and the biting cold would feel as if it were trying to freeze you from the outside in. Your fingers and toes would become painfully stiff, and any attempt to move would be met with an agonizing resistance. The chill would constrict your blood vessels, significantly reducing circulation and leading to a rapid onset of hypothermia. As you attempt to navigate the treacherous icy surface, the ground beneath you would prove to be perilous. The surface may be uneven, with hidden crevasses and sharp ice formations lurking beneath the pristine veneer. A misstep could send you tumbling into a hidden trench, resulting in severe injuries. The impact with the hard ice would jolt your body, potentially fracturing bones or causing internal damage. In this desolate landscape, you would find yourself alone and exposed, with no help in sight. Breathing would become increasingly difficult as you struggle against the thin atmosphere of Osiris. The air is not only frigid but also lacks the necessary oxygen for human survival. Each breath would feel like inhaling shards of ice, causing your lungs to constrict painfully. The sensation of suffocation would creep in, making it harder to focus on anything other than the desperate need for air. With each passing moment, your body would be deprived of the oxygen it so desperately needs, leading to confusion and panic. If you attempted to move, the cold would sap your strength rapidly. Your muscles would become sluggish and unresponsive, making even the simplest actions feel monumental. The psychological burden of your isolation would grow heavier, as the vast emptiness of Osiris stretches out in every direction. The realization that you are trapped in an environment where human life cannot endure would begin to seep into your mind, creating a profound sense of despair. In the absence of warmth, your body would start to shut down. The cold would invade your core, causing your heart rate to drop and your limbs to grow weaker. You would feel increasingly disoriented, the world around you blurring into a haze of white and gray. As hypothermia progresses, you would experience a sense of calmness that belies the severity of your situation, a deceptive feeling that might lead you to believe that surrendering to the cold is the only option. In those final moments, the chilling realization would wash over you that stepping onto the surface of Osiris was a fatal mistake. The icy landscape, once a sight of wonder, would transform into a tomb. Your consciousness would begin to fade as the cold wraps around you like a shroud, pulling you into darkness. The last thoughts that flit through your mind would be a haunting reflection of your vulnerability in the face of nature's fury, a stark reminder of the fragility of life in the unforgiving void of space. Ultimately, Osiris, with its frozen embrace and inhospitable atmosphere, would mark the end of your journey, an echo of the dangers that await in the vast reaches of the universe. The silent, icy surface would stand as a testament to the harsh realities of existence beyond our world, where the delicate balance of life can so easily tip into oblivion. Stepping onto the surface of WASP-12b, an exoplanet located about 870 light-years away in the constellation Auriga, would thrust you into an environment characterized by extremes that are utterly inhospitable to human life. This gas giant, known for its intense heat and unique atmospheric conditions, presents a series of insurmountable challenges that would lead to a swift and agonizing demise. As you descend onto WASP-12b, your first encounter would be with the atmosphere, which is predominantly composed of hydrogen and helium, along with traces of other gases. The sheer density of this atmosphere would be overwhelming. WASP-12b has a surface pressure significantly higher than Earth's, potentially thousands of times greater. Upon contact, your body would experience instantaneous and catastrophic effects. The pressure would crush your lungs and internal organs, leading to immediate loss of consciousness as your ribcage collapses under the immense force. There would be no escape. Your body would be unable to withstand this merciless environment. Even if you could somehow survive the crushing pressure, the extreme temperatures on WASP-12b would pose a lethal threat. The planet orbits very close to its parent star, resulting in daytime temperatures that can reach around 2,500 degrees Celsius. This searing heat would incinerate any organic matter within seconds. If you were equipped with advanced protective gear, it would likely fail under such extreme conditions, leaving you exposed to the relentless heat that would engulf you, leading to a horrific death by burning. In addition to the extreme heat, WASP-12b is known for its tumultuous weather patterns. The atmosphere is marked by high-velocity winds that can exceed 8,000 kilometers per hour. These winds would create a chaotic environment, with gusts strong enough to rip apart any structure and hurl you into the depths of the atmosphere. You would be battered by the relentless forces of nature, with every bone in your body potentially shattering upon impact with the swirling gases. The sensation of being tossed around by these winds would be terrifying, as you would have no control over your fate in such a violent storm. Moreover, the composition of the atmosphere poses additional risks. The presence of elements such as carbon monoxide and other toxic compounds could lead to acute poisoning. Even if you were able to endure the pressure and heat, breathing in these harmful gases would cause your body to shut down, leading to suffocation or severe internal damage. The toxic environment would overwhelm your respiratory system, leaving you gasping for breath as your body succumbed to the effects of poisoning. The psychological impact of being on WASP-12b would also take a toll. As you found yourself in this alien landscape, the realization that survival was impossible would likely induce panic and despair. The oppressive heat, deafening winds, and chaotic atmosphere would overwhelm your senses, creating a sense of utter hopelessness. As your body began to fail under the relentless conditions, the mental anguish of knowing that escape was futile would compound your suffering. In summary, stepping onto the surface of WASP-12b would result in a swift and horrifying end. The combination of crushing atmospheric pressure, extreme temperatures, violent winds, and toxic gases would create an environment utterly uninhabitable for humans. Any attempt to survive would be rendered pointless, as the myriad dangers present on this exoplanet would starkly illustrate the fragility of human life in the vast expanse of the universe. The harsh reality of WASP-12b serves as a reminder of the limits of endurance and the countless perils that await in the cosmos. Stepping onto the surface of HD 189733b, an exoplanet located about 64 light-years away in the constellation Vulpecula, would lead you into a realm of extreme conditions that are utterly hostile to human existence. Known for its vibrant blue color, this gas giant is characterized by its tumultuous atmosphere, high temperatures, and violent weather phenomena, creating a scenario where survival is impossible. As you first make contact with the atmosphere of HD 189733b, you would immediately be engulfed by a thick layer of gases primarily composed of hydrogen, helium, and trace amounts of other elements. The atmospheric pressure on this planet is significantly greater than Earth's, potentially reaching levels that could crush your body almost instantly. The immense force pressing down would compress your lungs and internal organs, leading to immediate asphyxiation and organ failure. Your body would not have time to react. The crushing pressure would be fatal before you could even comprehend your situation. If, hypothetically, you managed to withstand the pressure, the extreme temperatures would present a different lethal challenge. HD 189733b is known for its scorching daytime temperatures, which can soar well above 1,000 degrees Celsius. This kind of heat would render any form of organic matter instantly combustible. Even the most advanced protective gear would likely fail under such intense thermal conditions, allowing flames to engulf you in a matter of moments. The pain of being incinerated would be excruciating, as your skin and tissues would literally vaporize before your mind could fully process the horror of your fate. In addition to the heat, The planet is notorious for its violent weather patterns, including howling winds that can reach speeds of up to 8,700 kilometers per hour. These winds would create a chaotic and tumultuous atmosphere, with swirling clouds and storms that could toss you around like a feather. You would be battered by relentless gusts, leading to severe trauma as your body was hurled through the air, potentially colliding with debris or being torn apart by the sheer force of the winds. The sensation of being caught in such a tempest would evoke a visceral sense of terror, as you would have no control over your trajectory or fate. Moreover, the atmospheric composition poses another dire risk. The presence of toxic elements such as carbon monoxide and various compounds could lead to rapid poisoning. Should you attempt to breathe, your lungs would quickly fill with these harmful gases, causing severe respiratory distress and ultimately suffocation. As your body struggled against the toxic onslaught, you would feel an acute sense of panic as consciousness faded, leaving you gasping for air amidst the chaos of the alien environment. The psychological toll of being on HD 189733b would also be overwhelming. The realization that survival was impossible would likely induce feelings of despair and helplessness. The oppressive heat, deafening winds, and chaotic atmosphere would bombard your senses, creating a profound sense of isolation. In such dire circumstances, your mind would race with thoughts of your impending doom, but the harsh reality of your situation would set in quickly, leaving little time for reflection before succumbing to the lethal environment. In summary, stepping onto the surface of HD 189733b would result in a swift and agonizing demise. The combination of crushing atmospheric pressure, extreme temperatures, violent winds, and toxic gases would create an environment entirely uninhabitable for humans. Any attempt to survive would be futile, as the myriad dangers present on this exoplanet would starkly illustrate the fragility of human life in the vast and inhospitable universe. The brutal reality of HD 189733b serves as a powerful reminder of the limits of human endurance and the countless perils that await in the cosmos. Stepping onto the surface of GJ 1214b, an exoplanet located approximately 40 light-years away in the constellation Ophiuchus, would plunge you into an environment that is both alien and unforgiving. GJ 1214b is classified as a sub-Neptune planet, characterized by its thick atmosphere, potential water content, and extreme conditions that would be lethal to human life. As you approach the surface of GJ 1214b, you would first encounter its dense atmosphere, which is primarily composed of hydrogen and helium, with the possibility of water vapor and other gases. The atmospheric pressure on this planet is significantly higher than that of Earth. Upon contact, your body would be subjected to crushing pressure that would immediately overwhelm your physiological systems. Your lungs would collapse under the force, leading to immediate asphyxiation. The intense pressure would compress your body, causing severe trauma to your organs and swiftly leading to unconsciousness before death. Even if you somehow managed to withstand the pressure, the next immediate threat would be the temperature. GJ 1214b generally has a relatively mild climate compared to other exoplanets, but the surface conditions could still be perilous. The temperature can vary, but it is often quite warm, potentially reaching levels that would be uncomfortable and dangerous for human life. If the planet has substantial water content, you could find yourself in a thick vapor or liquid state, which would result in drowning or suffocation if the conditions were right. Should you find yourself in a scenario where the surface was covered with water or a supercritical fluid, the experience would be disorienting. The combination of pressure and temperature could create a scalding environment that would lead to immediate burns and damage to your skin and tissues. Your body would rapidly lose heat regulation, leading to hyperthermia as the surrounding environment overwhelmed your ability to maintain a safe internal body temperature. Moreover, the atmospheric composition presents additional risks. If there were any trace amounts of toxic gases or compounds, inhaling them would lead to rapid poisoning. Even in the best-case scenario, where the gases were not immediately harmful, the dense atmosphere would still pose a suffocation risk. You would struggle to breathe as the heavy air filled your lungs, leading to a feeling of panic and desperation. The sensation of gasping for air in a thick environment would be terrifying, as you fought against the inevitable. The psychological impact of being on GJ-1214b would also be profound. The realization that you were in an environment where survival was impossible would lead to overwhelming feelings of despair and helplessness. The oppressive atmosphere, combined with the physical discomfort and danger, would create a sense of isolation. You would be acutely aware of your vulnerable position in the universe, amplifying the terror of your impending demise. In summary, stepping onto the surface of GJ-1214b would likely lead to a swift and agonizing death. The combination of crushing atmospheric pressure, potentially extreme temperatures, and the risk of suffocation or drowning would create an environment entirely inhospitable to human life. Any attempt to survive would be futile, as the myriad dangers present on this exoplanet would starkly highlight the limits of human endurance amidst the vast and hostile universe. The harsh reality of GJ-1214b serves as a sobering reminder of the countless perils that exist beyond our own planet. Stepping onto the surface of 51 Pegasi b, an exoplanet located approximately 50 light-years away in the constellation Pegasus, would subject you to an environment that is utterly inhospitable to human life. Known as a hot Jupiter, this gas giant orbits very close to its host star, resulting in extreme conditions that would lead to a swift and painful demise. As you descend towards the planet, you would first encounter its atmosphere, which is primarily composed of hydrogen and helium. The atmospheric pressure on 51 Pegasi b is likely to be significantly higher than that of Earth. Upon landing, the crushing weight of the gases enveloping you would create immediate and catastrophic effects. The intense pressure would compress your lungs and internal organs almost instantaneously, leading to asphyxiation and severe trauma. The sensation of your body being crushed would be overwhelming, as the air pressure far exceeds what your body can withstand. If you somehow manage to survive the initial pressure, you would quickly face the extreme temperatures characteristic of this planet. The surface of 51 Pegasi b is believed to reach scorching temperatures of around 1,000 degrees Celsius due to its close proximity to its star. This kind of heat would incinerate any organic matter within moments. If you were equipped with any protective gear, it would likely fail under such intense thermal conditions, leaving you utterly unprotected. The sensation of your skin burning and tissues vaporizing would be excruciating, resulting in an agonizing death as your body succumbed to the flames. In addition to the heat, the atmosphere of 51 Pegasi b is likely to be turbulent and chaotic. The planet experiences extremely high winds and violent atmospheric dynamics. These winds can reach speeds of several thousand kilometers per hour, capable of creating a relentless barrage of pressure and temperature fluctuations. If you were caught in such a storm, you would be battered by the furious winds, which could easily throw you around, leading to severe trauma as your body collided with debris or the ground. The feeling of being tossed helplessly by these storms would be terrifying, as you realized there was no escape from the violence of the elements. Moreover, the potential presence of harmful chemicals in the atmosphere poses another deadly threat. If there are trace amounts of toxic gases, inhaling them would lead to rapid poisoning. The combination of high pressure and toxic air would create a scenario where you would struggle to breathe, gasping for air as your lungs filled with harmful substances. Each inhalation would become increasingly desperate as your body fought against the suffocating grip of the atmosphere. The psychological impact of being on 51 Pegasi b would also be profound. The realization that survival was utterly impossible would lead to overwhelming despair. The oppressive heat, the deafening roar of the winds, and the anxiety of knowing you were trapped in a lethal environment would heighten your sense of isolation. The mental anguish of facing imminent death in such a hostile setting would be compounded by the physical suffering your body would endure. In summary, stepping onto the surface of 51 Pegasi b would likely result in a swift and agonizing death. The combination of crushing atmospheric pressure, extreme temperatures, violent winds, and toxic gases would create an environment entirely uninhabitable for humans. Any attempt to survive would be futile, as the myriad dangers present on this exoplanet would starkly illustrate the fragility of human life in the vast and hostile universe. The harsh reality of 51 Pegasi b serves as a sobering reminder of the countless perils that exist beyond our own planet. Stepping onto the surface of K2-18b, an exoplanet located about 124 light-years away in the constellation Leo, would present a series of extreme conditions that render it inhospitable to human life. K2-18b is classified as a super-Earth, which suggests that it may have a rocky surface, but the reality of its environment could still lead to a swift and painful demise. As you make contact with the surface, the first challenge you would face is the atmospheric pressure. K2-18b likely has a significantly thicker atmosphere than Earth, possibly rich in hydrogen and other gases. Upon landing, the weight of the atmosphere would exert immense pressure on your body. This crushing force would compress your lungs and internal organs almost instantaneously, leading to immediate asphyxiation. The sensation of your chest being crushed would be overwhelming, leaving you gasping for air as your body struggled against the suffocating grip of the environment. If you managed to survive the initial pressure, your next threat would be the temperature. K2-18b is located within its star's habitable zone, meaning it could have conditions suitable for liquid water. However, the planet's temperature can vary widely, potentially reaching extremes that could lead to severe heat stress. If the surface temperature were to rise significantly, you would quickly succumb to hyperthermia. Your body would struggle to regulate its internal temperature, leading to dizziness, confusion, and finally, organ failure as your vital systems began to shut down. The sensation of your body overheating would be agonizing, as every part of you felt as though it were on fire. In addition to the oppressive heat, the possibility of encountering liquid water cannot be overlooked. If the surface were covered in water, you might find yourself submerged in a dense, possibly superheated liquid. The disorientation of being underwater, combined with the pressure, would create an immediate risk of drowning. If the water were at a boiling point, the scalding heat would cause severe burns, leading to excruciating pain as your skin and tissues were damaged. The feeling of being trapped in such an environment would be terrifying, as you struggled against the pain and the instinct to breathe. Should you somehow avoid drowning and manage to withstand the heat, the atmosphere itself might still pose a lethal risk. If K2-18b has an atmosphere containing toxic gases, breathing would become impossible without immediate exposure to lethal substances. Each breath would fill your lungs with pollutants, leading to rapid respiratory failure. The panic of gasping for air while being unable to breathe clean air would evoke a profound sense of helplessness. Your body would start to weaken as oxygen deprivation set in, causing you to lose consciousness as your brain struggled to function without the vital resource. The psychological toll of being on K2-18b would also be significant. The realization that you were in an environment where survival was impossible would lead to feelings of despair and isolation. The oppressive heat, the uncertainty of the terrain, and the physical suffering would compound the mental anguish. You would be acutely aware of your vulnerability in the vastness of space, and the knowledge that your fate was sealed would create a sense of dread. In summary, stepping onto the surface of K2-18b would likely result in a swift and agonizing death. The combination of crushing atmospheric pressure, extreme temperatures, the risk of drowning in liquid water, and the presence of potentially toxic gases would create an environment entirely uninhabitable for humans. Any attempts to survive would be futile, illustrating the fragility of human life in the cosmos. The harsh reality of K2-18b serves as a stark reminder of the myriad dangers that exist beyond our own planet. Stepping onto the surface of LHS 1140b, an exoplanet located approximately 40 light-years away in the constellation Eridanus, would subject you to a series of extreme and life-threatening conditions. LHS 1140b is classified as a super-Earth, which suggests that it has a rocky composition and may possess an atmosphere. However, the nature of that atmosphere and the environmental conditions would likely be lethal for human life. As you descend toward the surface, you would first encounter the planet's atmosphere, which is thought to be thick and rich in carbon dioxide. Upon touching down, the atmospheric pressure would be significantly higher than what you experience on Earth. This immense pressure would immediately begin to affect your body. The crushing weight of the atmosphere would compress your lungs and internal organs, making it nearly impossible to breathe. Each attempt to inhale would feel like a futile struggle against an invisible force, as your chest constricted under the pressure. Within moments, you would experience rapid asphyxiation, your body fighting desperately for oxygen as consciousness slipped away. If, against all odds, you managed to survive the initial pressure, the next immediate threat would be the temperature. Estimates suggest that LHS 1140b could experience extreme temperatures due to its proximity to its star and its potential greenhouse effect. If the surface temperature were to rise significantly, you would be confronted with an environment that could reach scorching levels, possibly well over 100 degrees Celsius. The intense heat would begin to cook your flesh and damage your cells almost instantly. The sensation of your skin blistering and your internal organs overheating would be excruciating, leading to a swift and agonizing death as your body succumbed to thermal shock. In addition to the oppressive heat, the atmospheric composition would likely pose another lethal risk. If the atmosphere is rich in carbon dioxide, you would quickly find yourself in a situation where oxygen is scarce. The air would be heavy and suffocating, leading to a feeling of panic as you gasped for breath. Each inhalation would become increasingly desperate, as your lungs filled with toxic gases. The sensation of losing consciousness would be terrifying, as your vision blurred and your mind struggled to grasp the reality of your impending death. Moreover, the potential presence of other harmful gases or particulates in the atmosphere could exacerbate your suffering. If there were acids or corrosive elements, coming into contact with your skin would result in severe burns, creating an agonizing sensation of your flesh melting away. The psychological impact of such pain, combined with the knowledge that escape was impossible, would heighten your sense of dread and despair. The landscape itself, assuming it is rocky and rugged, would add another layer of danger. The terrain could be littered with sharp rocks and unstable ground, increasing the risk of injury. If you were to fall or get caught in a precarious position, the resulting trauma could lead to broken bones or internal injuries, compounding your suffering in an already hostile environment. The psychological toll of being on LHS 1140b would be profound. The realization that you were trapped in an environment where survival was impossible would lead to overwhelming feelings of hopelessness. The oppressive heat, the chaotic atmosphere, and the physical torment your body would endure would create an acute sense of isolation. You would be left to confront the stark reality of your vulnerability in the universe, amplifying the anguish of your situation. In summary, stepping onto the surface of LHS 1140b would likely lead to a swift and agonizing death. The combination of crushing atmospheric pressure, extreme temperatures, suffocating gases, and the harsh landscape would create an environment entirely uninhabitable for humans. Any attempt to survive would be futile, starkly illustrating the fragile nature of human life amid the vast and hostile cosmos. The grim reality of LHS 1140b serves as a sobering reminder of the myriad dangers that lurk beyond our home planet. Stepping onto the surface of TOI 700d, an exoplanet situated about 100 light-years away in the constellation Dorado, would lead you into an environment that could be treacherous and potentially deadly. Classified as a potentially habitable zone planet, TOI 700d orbits its star in a region where conditions could allow for liquid water. However, the reality of its surface and atmosphere remains uncertain, and the conditions could still pose significant threats to human life. As you approach the planet, your descent would likely take you through an atmosphere that might be denser than Earth's. The moment you make contact with the surface, the weight of the atmosphere would press down on you, creating an immediate feeling of heaviness. If TOI 700d has a thick atmosphere, the pressure could be crushing, far exceeding what the human body can tolerate. The sensation of your lungs being compressed would be immediate. Each breath would become a desperate gasp as your body struggled against the overwhelming force. You would feel a sharp pain in your chest as your internal organs were subjected to this immense pressure, leading to rapid asphyxiation. Your vision would blur, and consciousness would fade quickly as your body succumbed to the lethal environment. If you somehow managed to endure the crushing pressure, The next challenge would be the temperature. Depending on the planet's distance from its star and its atmospheric composition, TOI 700D could experience extreme temperature variations. If you landed in an area exposed to direct sunlight, the heat could become intolerable, potentially exceeding 100 degrees Celsius. The immediate effect on your body would be severe. As your skin began to scorch and blister under the relentless heat, you would experience excruciating pain. Your body would struggle to cool itself, but without the ability to sweat properly in such conditions, you would quickly succumb to heatstroke. The sensation of your body overheating would be agonizing, as your internal systems began to fail one after another. In addition, the potential presence of liquid water on the surface could create another lethal scenario. If you found yourself in a body of water, the temperature could still be dangerously high, leading to boiling conditions. Even if you managed to stay afloat, the searing heat would cause severe burns to your skin and tissues, leading to a rapid loss of bodily function. The shock of entering such scalding water would be terrifying, as your body would react instinctively to escape the pain, but there would be nowhere to go. Beyond the immediate dangers of pressure and temperature, the composition of the atmosphere would also play a critical role in your survival. If the atmosphere contains high levels of carbon dioxide or other toxic gases, you would quickly find it difficult to breathe. Each breath would fill your lungs with noxious air, leading to a feeling of suffocation. The panic of gasping for clean air would be overwhelming as your body desperately sought oxygen. You would feel your consciousness slipping away as your brain struggled to function without adequate oxygen, leading to a horrifying sense of helplessness. The landscape of TOI 700D could also pose risks to your physical safety. Assuming it has rugged terrain, sharp rocks, and unstable surfaces, any misstep could lead to serious injury. The risk of falling and sustaining fractures or other injuries would compound the already hostile conditions. If you were to injure yourself, the pain and trauma would be compounded by the inhospitable environment, leaving you vulnerable and exposed to the elements. The psychological impact of being stranded on TOI 700D would be profound. The realization that you were trapped in a hostile environment with no hope of rescue would weigh heavily on your mind. The oppressive heat, the difficulty in breathing, and the physical pain would create an acute sense of isolation and despair. You would be left to confront the stark reality of your vulnerability in the cosmos, amplifying the sense of dread that comes with knowing that survival is impossible. In summary, stepping onto the surface of TOI 700D would likely lead to a swift and agonizing death. The combination of crushing atmospheric pressure, extreme temperatures, toxic air, and treacherous terrain would create an environment entirely uninhabitable for humans. Any attempts to survive would be futile, starkly illustrating the fragile nature of human life in the vast and often hostile universe. The grim reality of TOI 700D serves as a sobering reminder of the myriad dangers that exist beyond our home planet. Stepping onto the surface of WASP-17b, a gas giant exoplanet located about 1,000 light-years away in the constellation Pictor, would lead you into an environment that is both alien and deadly. WASP-17b is classified as a hot Jupiter, characterized by its large size and close proximity to its star, leading to extreme atmospheric and thermal conditions. As you approach the planet, you would be met with a thick atmosphere primarily composed of hydrogen and helium, with possible traces of other gases. Upon landing, the first sensation would be the overwhelming pressure exerted by the dense atmosphere. The pressure on WASP-17b could be far greater than what humans experience on Earth, potentially crushing your body in an instant. The feeling would be suffocating, as your lungs and internal organs are compressed under this immense weight. In mere moments, your body would struggle to adapt, gasping for air in an atmosphere devoid of the oxygen necessary for human survival. The sensation of your chest tightening would be immediate, leading to rapid asphyxiation as consciousness faded. If, by some miracle, you managed to endure the crushing pressure, the next threat would be the planet's extreme temperatures. WASP-17b is known for its scorching heat, likely exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius in certain regions due to its proximity to its host star. The moment you touched the surface, you would be enveloped in an inferno. The intense heat would cause severe burns almost instantly, searing your skin and frying your internal organs. You would experience unbearable pain as your cells began to break down and your body succumbed to thermal shock. The sensation of being cooked alive would be excruciating, as your nerves screamed in agony, leading to a swift and brutal demise. In addition to the suffocating pressure and blistering heat, the atmosphere of WASP-17b could be filled with violent storms and high-speed winds. If you somehow managed to withstand the temperature and pressure, you would soon be caught in the chaos of these storms. Winds could reach speeds of over 8,000 kilometers per hour, capable of tearing apart anything in their path. The sensation of being buffeted by such powerful winds would be disorienting, as you struggled to maintain your footing. The sheer force would propel you through the air, leading to catastrophic injuries as your body was slammed against the surface or into other debris. The experience would be a whirlwind of pain and confusion, culminating in a fatal impact. Moreover, the composition of the atmosphere could introduce additional lethal risks. If the gases present included corrosive elements or toxic compounds, exposure would lead to severe chemical burns. Breathing in such an atmosphere would be impossible, and any attempt to do so would result in immediate agony as your lungs were damaged by the harmful gases. The feeling of your throat closing would be suffocating, as your body fought against the toxic air, leading to a painful and inevitable loss of consciousness. The psychological toll of being on WASP-17b would also be significant. The realization that you were in an environment fundamentally hostile to human life would create feelings of despair and helplessness. The overwhelming heat, pressure, and chaos of the atmosphere would amplify your sense of isolation, leaving you to grapple with the knowledge that escape was impossible. The torment of your physical suffering combined with the mental anguish of knowing you were stranded in such a lethal environment would create an unbearable situation. In summary, stepping onto the surface of WASP-17b would likely lead to a swift and brutal death. The combination of crushing atmospheric pressure, extreme temperatures, violent storms, and toxic gases would create an environment entirely uninhabitable for humans. Any attempts to survive would be futile, starkly illustrating the fragility of human life in the vast and merciless cosmos. The harsh reality of WASP-17b serves as a sobering reminder of the myriad dangers that exist beyond our own planet. Stepping onto the surface of HD 97658b, an exoplanet located approximately 40 light-years away in the constellation Leo, would plunge you into an environment that is both hostile and unforgiving. This planet is classified as a super-Earth, suggesting it is rocky but likely possesses a thick atmosphere. The conditions on this exoplanet could be fatal for any human attempting to survive its surface. As you descend towards the planet, you would first encounter its atmosphere, which is thought to be dense and potentially rich in various gases. Upon landing, you would immediately feel the weight of the atmosphere pressing down on you. The atmospheric pressure could be several times greater than that of Earth, leading to a rapid sense of constriction. The sensation would be akin to being compressed in a vice. Your lungs would struggle to expand, and your heart would race as it tried to pump blood under this immense pressure. Each attempt to breathe would be met with resistance, and you would quickly be overwhelmed by a sense of panic as your body fought for oxygen. If, by some chance, you managed to withstand the crushing pressure, the temperature on HD 97658b would pose another immediate threat. Depending on its distance from its star and atmospheric conditions, the surface temperature could reach extreme levels, potentially soaring above 300 degrees Celsius. The moment you touched the ground, your skin would begin to blister and burn under the relentless heat. The sensation of your flesh cooking would be excruciating, as your body's ability to regulate temperature fails. You would feel your internal organs begin to overheat, leading to systemic failure. The agony of thermal shock would be all-consuming as your body succumbed to the unbearable conditions, and the world around you would blur into a haze of pain. Alongside the oppressive heat, the atmosphere could contain harmful gases, such as carbon dioxide or other toxic compounds. If you inhaled these gases, your lungs would quickly fill with noxious air, leading to a feeling of suffocation. The panic would set in as you gasped for breath, realizing that the air you needed to survive was laced with poison. Your throat would burn, and your chest would tighten as your body struggled to cope. Each breath would become more desperate, until the lack of oxygen would lead you to lose consciousness. The landscape of HD 97658b could also present significant dangers. Assuming it features rocky or uneven terrain, any misstep could lead to serious injury. If you were to stumble or fall, the resulting impact could cause fractures or other traumatic injuries. In such a hostile environment, any injury would be compounded by the harsh conditions, making it nearly impossible to escape the pain or seek help. Moreover, the psychological effects of being stranded on HD 97658b would be profound. The realization that you were trapped in an environment where survival was impossible would weigh heavily on your mind. The oppressive heat, the difficulty breathing, and the physical pain would create an acute sense of isolation and despair. You would be left to confront the brutal reality of your situation, amplifying the sense of dread and hopelessness that comes with knowing you are at the mercy of a hostile world. As your body began to fail, the culmination of overwhelming heat, pressure, and toxic atmosphere would lead to a swift demise. Your senses would dull in the face of such suffering, and the world around you would fade into darkness as you lost consciousness. In those final moments, you would be left with the stark understanding that stepping onto the surface of HD 97658b was a journey into an unforgiving realm, where the fragile nature of human life is laid bare against the vastness of the universe. In summary, stepping onto the surface of HD 97658b would likely lead to a rapid and agonizing death. The combination of crushing atmospheric pressure, extreme temperatures, toxic air, and treacherous terrain would create an environment entirely uninhabitable for humans. Any attempt to survive would be futile, starkly highlighting the vulnerability of human life in the face of the cosmos' many dangers. The harsh reality of HD 97658b serves as a chilling reminder of the perils that lie beyond our own planet. Stepping onto the surface of Sedna, a distant and enigmatic object in the outer reaches of our solar system, would thrust you into an extraordinarily hostile environment. Sedna, classified as a trans-Neptunian object, is known for its frigid temperatures and extreme distance from the Sun. As you approach and eventually land on its surface, the first thing that would strike you is the overwhelming cold, which could plummet to around -240°C. Upon contact with the surface, your body would instantly begin to suffer from the effects of severe hypothermia. The chill would bite into your skin, and within moments you would feel the numbing sensation spread through your extremities. Your fingers and toes would become painfully cold, and any exposed skin would be at risk of frostbite. The sensation of ice creeping into your bones would be agonizing, as your body fought to maintain its core temperature. Breathing in the frigid air would feel sharp and stinging, as each inhalation sent chills racing down your spine. The cold would penetrate deeply, leading to shivering that would become uncontrollable. As your body struggled to cope with the extreme temperatures, your vital organs would begin to slow down. The heart, working harder to circulate blood, would become strained, and your circulation would start to falter. The feeling of blood retreating from your extremities would be alarming, as your fingers and toes turned numb and pale. Your muscles would begin to stiffen, making movement difficult. The chilling realization that you were effectively freezing alive would set in, amplifying the panic as you tried to find some way to escape the relentless cold. If you attempted to move around, you would quickly find that the landscape of Sedna is not only frozen but also treacherous. The surface is likely covered in a mix of ice, snow, and possibly rocky terrain. Any misstep could lead to slipping or falling, resulting in injury. If you were to tumble onto the hard ground, the impact could cause fractures or other trauma. The pain from such injuries would be compounded by the cold, making it increasingly difficult to focus on anything other than the agony radiating from your body. In addition to the extreme cold, the atmosphere of Sedna is incredibly thin, composed primarily of nitrogen and possibly other gases, but lacking the oxygen necessary for human survival. Even if you could somehow endure the freezing temperatures and the physical pain from the harsh terrain, the lack of breathable air would be your next challenge. As you gasped for breath, the thin atmosphere would provide little assistance, leading to a feeling of suffocation. Each breath would become labored, and the panic of realizing you were unable to sustain yourself would intensify. The psychological toll of being stranded on Sedna would add to your suffering. The isolation of being so far from Earth, coupled with the realization that you were in a place where survival was nearly impossible, would create an overwhelming sense of despair. The vast, desolate landscape would stretch endlessly around you, a stark reminder of your vulnerability in the unforgiving cosmos. The combination of physical pain and mental anguish would lead to a rapid decline in your will to fight against the harsh conditions. As time passed, the cold would continue to take its toll, leading to a gradual shutdown of your bodily functions. Your movements would slow, and consciousness would begin to fade as your body succumbed to the effects of hypothermia. The sensation of warmth would be replaced by a deep, numbing darkness, as your body finally gave in to the merciless environment. In those final moments, the chilling realization that you had ventured into a realm where no human could survive would echo in your mind, as the hostile conditions of Sedna extinguished the last remnants of life. In summary, stepping onto the surface of Sedna would likely lead to a slow and agonizing death. The combination of extreme cold, thin atmosphere, treacherous terrain, and the psychological effects of isolation would create an environment entirely inhospitable to human life. Any attempts to survive would be futile, starkly illustrating the fragility of existence in the vast expanse of the universe. The harsh reality of Sedna serves as a sobering reminder of the dangers that lie in the uncharted territories of our solar system. Stepping onto the surface of Quawar, a distant object located in the Kuiper Belt, would immerse you in an environment that is both alien and fatal. Quawar, named after a creation deity from the mythology of the Tongva people, is a large trans-Neptunian object characterized by its icy surface and frigid temperatures, which can plummet to around -220 degrees Celsius. As you descend towards Quawar, the first thing you'd notice is the stark darkness surrounding you, as the sunlight is far weaker at this distance from the sun. Upon landing, the moment you set foot on the icy terrain, your body would be immediately assaulted by the extreme cold. The atmosphere is thin, and the chilling air would feel like daggers against your skin, causing a sharp, stinging sensation. Your body, unprepared for such frigid conditions, would begin to lose heat rapidly. Within moments, you would experience the initial symptoms of hypothermia. Your fingers and toes would become painfully cold, and an intense numbness would spread through your limbs. The sensation of ice creeping into your extremities would be excruciating, and you would find it increasingly difficult to move. Each breath would feel like inhaling liquid nitrogen, as the thin atmosphere offered little warmth and even less oxygen. The cold would constrict your lungs, making each attempt to breathe feel labored and harsh. Panic would begin to set in as you realized that with every breath, you were struggling against the very air that surrounded you. If you attempted to move across the surface, the icy ground would pose significant challenges. The terrain of Quawar is likely covered in a mixture of frozen nitrogen, methane, and other ices, creating a slippery and treacherous landscape. A simple slip could lead to a fall, resulting in injuries that would be exacerbated by the cold. The impact of hitting the hard, icy ground would send shocks of pain throughout your body, and as you lay there, the freezing temperatures would quickly begin to sap your strength and will to continue. In addition to the risk of physical injury, the atmosphere of Quawar is extremely thin, composed mostly of nitrogen and lacking in breathable oxygen. This would present a dire situation. Despite your efforts to move or seek shelter, the lack of oxygen would become increasingly apparent. Each breath would become more desperate, as your lungs would struggle against the thin air, leading to feelings of suffocation. Your throat would burn, and a sense of dread would envelop you as you realized that you were unable to sustain your life in this inhospitable environment. The psychological effects of being stranded on Quawar would amplify your suffering. The realization that you were in a place where survival was improbable would weigh heavily on your mind. The vast, barren landscape would stretch endlessly in all directions, a stark reminder of your isolation in the cold depths of space. The combination of physical pain from the freezing temperatures and potential injuries, coupled with the mental anguish of knowing you were utterly alone, would lead to a deep sense of despair. As time passed, your body's functions would begin to deteriorate. The extreme cold would continue to sap your energy, leading to a slowing heartbeat and reduced circulation. You would begin to feel disoriented, and your movements would become sluggish as hypothermia took hold. Your body would enter a state of shutdown, with vital organs struggling to function under the relentless conditions. The sensation of warmth would be a distant memory as you succumb to the cold, and your consciousness would begin to fade. In those final moments, as the darkness closed in, you would be left with the haunting understanding that you had ventured into a realm where human life could not endure. Quawar, with its icy embrace and inhospitable atmosphere, would become the place where your existence flickered out, a stark reminder of the harsh realities of the universe. The inhospitable nature of this distant world serves as a sobering testament to the fragility of life in the vastness of space, where even the most resilient of beings can find themselves at the mercy of extreme conditions. Stepping onto the surface of Orcus, a large trans-Neptunian object located in the Kuiper Belt, would thrust you into an environment that is incredibly hostile and unforgiving. Orcus, often referred to as a dwarf planet, is known for its icy surface and extreme cold, with temperatures that can plummet to around -220 degrees Celsius. As you descend towards Orcus, the first thing that would strike you is the overwhelming darkness surrounding you. The light from the sun is faint at such a distance, casting a dim glow over the icy landscape. Upon landing, the moment your feet touch the surface, you would feel an immediate and intense chill that penetrates your clothing and skin. The air is thin and frigid, creating a sensation of sharpness against your skin, almost as if tiny needles are pricking you. Within seconds, your body would begin to react to the extreme cold. The numbness would quickly spread from your fingers and toes, creeping inward as your extremities begin to freeze. As your blood circulation slows, the sensation of ice encasing your limbs would become agonizing. Breathing in the frigid air would feel harsh and biting, as the oxygen is sparse and the atmosphere consists mainly of nitrogen and other gases that are not breathable for humans. Each inhalation would feel like a battle against the cold, as your lungs struggle to expand in the icy air, leading to a feeling of suffocation. If you attempted to move across the surface, you would find that the ground is likely composed of a mixture of frozen nitrogen, methane, and other ices, creating a slippery and treacherous environment. A simple misstep could send you sprawling, resulting in a painful impact against the hard, icy surface. The shock of hitting the ground would radiate throughout your body, and any injury sustained would be exacerbated by the relentless cold. Your body would struggle to recover from the fall, as the pain from your injuries would compete with the overwhelming cold that seeks to incapacitate you. As you attempt to regain your footing, the reality of your situation would begin to sink in. The thin atmosphere would quickly become a dire concern. Without sufficient oxygen, your body would begin to panic. Each breath would feel more desperate, as your lungs would burn from the effort of trying to extract oxygen from the frigid air. The realization that you are utterly alone in this inhospitable place, combined with the physical pain and struggle for survival, would lead to a deepening sense of dread. Psychologically, the isolation of being on Orcus would compound your suffering. The vast, desolate landscape would stretch endlessly before you, a stark reminder of your vulnerability in the cold depths of space. There would be no refuge, no shelter to offer warmth or safety. The starkness of your surroundings would serve as a constant reminder that you are in a realm where human life cannot endure. The combination of physical pain, the biting cold, and the crushing loneliness would create a profound sense of despair. As time passed, your body would begin to succumb to the extreme conditions. The cold would continue to sap your strength, leading to a slowing heartbeat and reduced circulation. Your movements would become sluggish, and disorientation would set in as hypothermia took hold. Your body would struggle to maintain its core temperature, and the organs would begin to fail as they are deprived of warmth and oxygen. The sensation of warmth would fade completely, replaced by an encroaching darkness that would envelop your consciousness. In those final moments, you would be left with the stark understanding that stepping onto the surface of Orcus was an act that sealed your fate. The realization that you had ventured into a realm where survival was impossible would wash over you, and as your consciousness slipped away, you would be consumed by the cold, a stark reminder of the harsh realities of the universe. Orcus, with its icy embrace and inhospitable atmosphere, would become the place where your existence flickered out, leaving only the silent, frozen landscape behind as a testament to the fragility of life in the vastness of space. Stepping onto the surface of Earth, a planet characterized by its vibrant life forms and diverse ecosystems, offers a dramatically different experience compared to the icy, barren landscapes of distant celestial bodies. However, even on Earth, the circumstances of life can lead to death in a multitude of ways, depending on the environment and situation you find yourself in. Imagine you are in a remote area, perhaps a dense forest or a rugged mountain range, far from civilization. The sun is shining overhead, but the beauty of nature can quickly turn deadly. As you begin to explore, you could encounter a variety of hazards. One of the most immediate threats might be the risk of a fall. Traversing rocky terrain or steep inclines, a misstep could lead to a tumble down a cliff or into a ravine. The impact would be jarring, sending shockwaves through your body. You might suffer broken bones, internal injuries, or even a concussion. The pain would be immediate and intense, and as you lie there, vulnerable and alone, the realization of your precarious situation would set in. If you were in a forest, the risk of getting lost could lead to dire consequences. As you wander deeper into the trees, the sunlight would begin to fade, creating a sense of disorientation. The underbrush would thicken, and soon you might find it difficult to retrace your steps. Night would descend, bringing with it the chill of the air and the sounds of nocturnal creatures. In your search for safety, you might inadvertently venture into an area inhabited by wildlife. A sudden encounter with a bear or a venomous snake could turn fatal in an instant. The defensive instincts of an animal could lead to an attack, and in a remote location, medical help could be hours or even days away. Even in a seemingly benign environment, something as simple as an insect bite could become a harbinger of death. A mosquito could inject you with a virus or parasite, leading to diseases like malaria or West Nile virus. These illnesses might not manifest immediately, but as days pass, you would experience fever, fatigue, and confusion. Your body would succumb to the infection, and without treatment, your health would rapidly decline. In a more urban setting, the threats might shift but remain equally dangerous. Imagine stepping onto a busy street without paying attention, only to be struck by a vehicle. The impact would be catastrophic, sending your body flying through the air. The pain would be immediate and overwhelming, as bones break and organs are damaged. The world around you would become a blur, filled with the sounds of screeching tires and panicked voices. As you lie on the pavement, the realization of your injuries would wash over you, and you would struggle to breathe, each gasp bringing agony. Even in a seemingly safe environment, the risk of poisoning could arise. Consuming food that has been contaminated, either through improper handling or natural toxins, could lead to severe illness. The onset of symptoms, such as vomiting and abdominal pain, would be sudden and debilitating. Your body would fight against the toxins, but the effects could be severe enough to lead to kidney failure or death if medical attention is not sought immediately. In any scenario, the psychological toll of impending death would weigh heavily on you. The isolation, whether from being lost in the woods or struck in a city, would amplify feelings of vulnerability and despair. The knowledge that you are at the mercy of your environment, with no immediate help in sight, would create a profound sense of hopelessness. As time passes, your body would begin to shut down in response to severe injury, infection, or poisoning. Shock would set in, leading to a rapid drop in blood pressure and a weakening pulse. You would feel cold and clammy, and consciousness would begin to slip away as your body fights to survive. The world around you would fade, and in those final moments, the thoughts of your loved ones and the life you once knew would flash through your mind, a bittersweet reminder of what you were losing. In summary, while stepping onto the surface of Earth might initially seem safe, the reality is that countless dangers lurk in every environment. Whether through injury, illness, or the unpredictability of nature, death can come in many forms, each with its own unique and harrowing story. The fragility of life is evident even on our home planet, reminding us that safety is often an illusion in the face of life's inherent risks. Sleep well, learners.